He grew up sleeping in a car for 11 months. He learned to read at 9 years old, 3 years later than the other kids, because his mother was working 2 jobs, and there was no one home to sit with him and a book. He washed dishes at a diner on Route 9 in Baton Rouge when he was 14, before school, for $4.25 an hour, and he saved every dollar in a shoebox under his mattress, because his mother had told him that a man who controls his money controls his life. He had been working in restaurants his whole life. He had never once sat down at a nice table and ordered whatever he wanted, until one Thursday evening in Miami, when he walked into a restaurant called 11 Palms in a pair of clean jeans and a white linen shirt, and a waiter named Daniel looked him up and down and told him the kitchen was closed. The kitchen was not closed. There were 14 occupied tables behind him, every one of them lit by candlelight, every one of them being served. What Daniel did not know, what nobody in that dining room knew, was that the man he had just turned away at the door was Shaquille O'Neal. That Shaquille O'Neal happened to know the owner of 11 Palms personally, and that the owner was, at that exact moment, parking his car 2 blocks away. This is the story of Marcus James Webb, a man who survived everything to get to that restaurant, and the night that one wrong decision and one right person rewrote the rest of his life. 11 Palms was the kind of restaurant that made you feel the price before you opened the menu. The entrance was framed by actual palm trees, slim and lit from below, and the walkway between them was pale stone that had been imported, according to the Design magazine feature framed in the lobby, from a quarry in Portugal. Inside, the lighting was amber and low. The tables were well spaced, covered in white linen, with candles in geometric glass holders that cast shadows you could lean into. The wine list was a separate leather-bound volume. The music was a single guitar, played live, barely louder than the conversation around it. The host stand was just inside the door, and standing at it that Thursday evening was a waiter named Daniel Cortez. Daniel was 28 years old, broad-shouldered, with a practiced half-smile and the particular brand of confidence that comes from working at a place where the average check is $340, and the clientele has learned to behave accordingly. He had been at 11 Palms for 2 years. He was good at his job. He was also, on this particular evening, the only front-of-house staff visible near the entrance, and he had made a decision, alone and quickly, without asking anyone. He had seen Shaquille O'Neal walk up the stone path in jeans. He had seen the size of him, the ease of him, the absence of a reservation name he recognized. He had made a calculation. It was the wrong one. "Good evening," Daniel said, as the door opened. "I'm afraid we're fully committed for the evening. The kitchen's wrapping up service." Behind him, 14 tables burned with candlelight. A server in a white jacket carried a tray of sea bass through the main room. A sommelier poured something dark and careful into a glass at table 6. Shaquille looked at the room. He looked at Daniel. He said nothing for a moment. "I spoke with the reservations team this afternoon," he said. "I was told walk-ins were welcome at the bar until 10. "We've had some changes this evening," Daniel said. His voice was smooth, unhurried, professionally apologetic. "I do apologize for the inconvenience." Shaquille O'Neal was not a man who raised his voice in public. He never had been, not even during the years when he had every reason to. Not even in locker rooms, or in press rooms, or in any of the 1,000 situations where a man his size and his fame could have used volume as a weapon and found no one willing to argue. He looked at Daniel for one more moment. Then he said, very quietly, "All right. Thank you." He turned and walked back out through the palm trees and onto the stone path. He did not pull out his phone. He did not look for a camera. He stood on the sidewalk under the warm Miami night and thought about Marcus Webb, who had texted him 3 hours earlier to say that he was already inside and had gotten them a good spot at the bar. He texted Marcus now, "Come outside." Marcus Webb appeared in the doorway of 11 Palms 40 seconds later, confused, with a half-eaten bread roll still in his hand. To understand why this moment mattered, you need to understand who Marcus Webb was. Marcus grew up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, the youngest of 4 boys, in a house on Dalton Street, where the roof leaked in 2 places and the landlord never fixed either one. His father, a man named Reginald, left when Marcus was 5. Not dramatically, he simply stopped coming home, the way some men do, until his absence became its own kind of presence. A hollow in the shape of a father that Marcus spent the next 20 years trying to fill with work. His mother, Evelyn, was a certified nursing assistant. She worked 12-hour shifts, sometimes back-to-back. She was never not tired, and she was never not there, and Marcus understood from a very early age that those two things together were a kind of love most people never get. He slept in their 1991 Buick LeSabre for 11 months when he was 17, after a landlord dispute left them without an apartment between October and the following August. He did not miss a single day of school during those 11 months. He showered in the school gym. He kept his clothes pressed. He did not tell anyone. He learned to read at 9, 3 years late, in a summer program run by a church volunteer named Mrs. Turode, who sat with him every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon and never once made him feel ashamed of where he was starting from. He washed dishes at a diner on Route 9 at 14. He saved every dollar. He kept the shoebox until it was full, and then he opened a checking account, and then a savings account, and then, years later, at 31 years old, he opened a small restaurant of his own called Threadcraft Kitchen on the east side of Miami. A 28-seat lunch counter that served Creole food the way his mother made it. Real, simple, cooked from memory. Threadcraft Kitchen had been open for 3 years when Marcus texted Shaquille about dinner. They had met through a mutual connection in the Miami business community. Shaq had eaten at Threadcraft twice and liked it enough to exchange numbers. They were not close friends. They were the kind of people who had enough in common to enjoy the same room, and Marcus had texted because he was celebrating something. His restaurant had just been named one of the top 10 neighborhood spots in Miami by a local magazine, and he had wanted, just once, to mark the occasion somewhere that required a jacket. He had arrived at 11 Palms alone. He had gotten a seat at the bar and ordered sparkling water and waited. And then Shaq had texted him from outside. Marcus Webb stood on the stone path with his bread roll and squinted in the warm dark. "What happened?" he said. Shaq told him, calmly, without embellishment. Marcus was quiet. He looked at the entrance of the restaurant. He looked at the palm trees, lit from below. He had been inside for 40 minutes. He had been served water. He had been handed a menu. Nobody had looked at him the way Shaq was describing. "He told you the kitchen was closed," Marcus said. He did. Marcus was still looking at the door. Something moved across his face. Not anger. Exactly. Recognition. The particular expression of a man who has seen this before, and thought, incorrectly, that he had stopped seeing it. "You want to go somewhere else?" Marcus said. "I want to wait here for about 90 seconds, Shaq said. He had texted James on the walk outside. James Okafor had owned 11 Palms for 6 years. He was Nigerian-American, 51 years old, a former financial analyst who had left a comfortable career to open a restaurant because, as he had told the Miami Herald once, "I spent 20 years helping other people own beautiful things. I wanted to own something beautiful myself." He was meticulous, generous, and, on the subject of hospitality, nearly religious. He was also, as it happened, 2 blocks away and about to park. He had gotten Shaq's text while pulling into a space on Brickell. It said only, "At your front door. Your guy just turned me away." Kitchen closed, apparently. James read it twice. He read it the way you read something when your brain refuses to accept what your eyes are saying. Then he got out of the car and walked the 2 blocks at a pace that by the time he reached the stone path was very close to a run. Daniel Cortez was refilling water at table 4 when the front door opened again. He did not immediately see who it was. He finished pouring. He placed the carafe back on his tray. He turned. James Okafor was standing inside the entrance. James was not a man who raised his voice either. In 6 years, not once. Not at a supplier. Not at a health inspector. Not at a reviewer who had gotten something wrong in print. His staff knew that the quieter James got, the more carefully they should listen. He was very quiet now. "Daniel," he said. "Come to the front, please." Daniel crossed the room. James looked at him for a moment, the way a person looks at something they are trying to understand. "Did you turn away a guest this evening?" James said. "We were at capacity," Daniel said. "I used my judgment. I'm going to ask you to go find Renata." James said, "Tell her you're taking a break. And then I'd like you to wait in my office." Daniel looked at him. He looked at the door. He went to find Renata. James walked back outside. Shaq and Marcus were standing at the edge of the stone path. James shook Shaq's hand, and then Marcus's. He apologized, directly and without hedging, to both of them. "I need you to come inside," he said. "Both of you. Please." They followed him in. James seated them himself, not at the bar, but at a table near the window. A good table, with the garden view and the guitarist a comfortable distance away. He brought the bread himself. He brought the menus himself. "Order whatever you want," he said. "This evening is mine to give." Marcus Webb opened the menu. He had been in restaurants his whole life, working them, not sitting in them. He knew how a kitchen smelled at the end of a long service. He knew how much a server's feet hurt by 10 o'clock. He knew the margin on a $40 pasta dish and the cost of the tablecloth, and exactly how much invisible labor went into the experience of just sitting down and being taken care of. He looked at the menu for a long moment. He ordered the snapper. He ordered a glass of something the sommelier recommended, something in the $18 range, not the expensive side. He thought about his mother, Evelyn, who had never once in her life sat at a table like this. He made a quiet decision. Halfway through the meal, while Marcus was explaining the sauce situation at Threadcraft to Shaq, with the intensity of a man who had strong opinions about roux, James Okafor came back to the table and sat down. Not to manage, not to perform, to talk. He had been in the restaurant business for 6 years, he said, and the thing nobody tells you is that hospitality is not a skill. It's a value. You can teach someone to carry a tray. You can teach them the wine list. You cannot teach them to see the person on the other side of the door as someone who deserves to be here. Tonight was a failure of that, James said. He was looking at both of them. And I want you to know that I understand what that means, beyond the inconvenience. Marcus looked at him. My mother cleaned hotel rooms for 23 years, James said. She never stayed in one. The table was quiet for a moment. What happened to your staff member? Marcus said. That's an ongoing conversation, James said. I'm not asking to have him fired, Marcus said. I want to be clear about that. James looked at him. Tell me what you're asking. Marcus picked up his bread. He thought for a moment. People make bad decisions when they don't understand something, he said. He didn't understand who he was looking at. I don't mean Shaq, I mean me. He saw a man in jeans and he made a calculation. He's going to make that calculation again, unless something changes in how he sees people. He set the bread down. I run a 28-seat restaurant on the east side. I have 3 employees. I would be very glad to have him come in for a day and work a lunch service with us, not as punishment, as education. He paused. If he's willing. James Okafor looked at Marcus Webb for a long moment. Then he looked at Shaq. Shaq was watching Marcus with the focused expression of a man who has just seen someone do something he did not expect. I'll ask him, James said. Daniel Cortez came into Threadcraft Kitchen on a Tuesday morning 6 weeks later. He came in at 9. Marcus had him on prep until 11, then on the floor for the lunch rush, then on dishes until 2. It was not glamorous. It was also not punishment. Marcus worked every station alongside him and talked the entire time, not about the night at 11 Palms, but about where the food came from, why the recipes were what they were, what his mother had taught him about feeding people. At one point, during a lull between the lunch rush and cleanup, a woman came in alone and sat at the counter. She was elderly, simply dressed, and she spent a long time with the menu. When Daniel went to take her order, she asked if the red beans and rice could be made without the sausage for dietary reasons. He went to the kitchen. He came back and told her yes. He brought her a glass of water without being asked. He did not know it, but Marcus was watching from the kitchen pass. After she left, Daniel came back to do his dishes. You did well, Marcus said. Daniel looked at him. I didn't do anything. You saw her, Marcus said. That's the whole job. The woman at that counter had been Evelyn Webb, Marcus's mother. He had not planned it that way. She came in every other Tuesday for lunch because it was the best red beans and rice she had ever tasted. A fact she told everyone she met, often while also mentioning that her son made it, and she did not know that her son had specifically asked her to come in that day, in that hour, so that one young man could have the experience of serving someone without knowing who she was. Marcus had not told her the reason. He had just said, "Come for lunch Tuesday, Mama. I'll make your table nice." She had asked no further questions. She never did. Threadcraft Kitchen was featured in the Miami Herald the following spring, not the neighborhood magazine, the actual paper, in a full-page piece about emerging restaurants reshaping the East Side. The article mentioned Marcus Webb's background, the Buick, the shoebox, the dishwashing at 14, Mrs. Turode, and the Tuesday afternoons. And it mentioned, briefly, that a conversation at 11 Palms had led to a mentorship partnership between the two restaurants, with 11 Palms staff rotating through Threadcraft quarterly as part of a new front-of-house training program James Okafor had quietly built out over the winter. Daniel Cortez was quoted in the article. He said only one thing. He said, "I thought I understood hospitality. I didn't. I do now." Marcus Webb read the article at the counter before opening on the day it ran. He read it twice. He set it down. He went to start the roux. Later, when his mother called to say she'd seen it, she asked him how it felt to be in the newspaper. "Ask me when I've got good red beans on," he said. "I'm asking you now," she said. He thought about it. "It feels like Cedric was right," he said. He had not known Cedric. But he had read that story, the one circulating online, about the woman in the Atlanta hospital billing department, who had told a large man in a gray hoodie, "The measure of a person is what they do when nobody's looking, and nobody's asking." He had saved it to his phone. He looked at it sometimes before opening. Now I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your city and country in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel. If this story moved you, even just a little, hit that like button. It takes 1 second, but it helps more people find stories like this one. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and tap that bell so you never miss another video. But here's the most important thing I'll ask you today. Share this video. Send it to your mom. Send it to someone who needs to hear that seeing the person in front of you is the whole job and the whole life. Because kindness is free, and sharing it costs nothing. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.